All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to start with a few housekeeping announcements as folks are still joining the call. First, we have live interpretation as an option for those of you who are on the Zoom. If you want to get that, you got to click the interpretation button and select Spanish. Thank you so much to Rex and Isaac for making that happen. DSA is the largest socialist organization in the country right now. And at the root of socialism is a profound commitment to democracy as a means and an end. We fight to weaken the power of corporations and build a mass movement of working people that can transform society. You can find our chapters each organizing around local conditions in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. A better world is possible. So as folks are joining, we're going to pop up a poll to find out, how are you involved in DSA? Are you a member? Are you not a member yet? Hopefully you will be after the call. Are you organizing with a chapter or are you an at-large member? So you should see a poll popping up in a second. Go ahead and give it a vote. And if you're having any trouble, you can also type in the chat. We'll be able to see that. Thank you all for joining us. Just give it a vote, how you're involved, if you're not yet a member, if you're not yet involved in your local chapter, or if you're at large, or if you are involved in your chapter. And we have results. Awesome. So 85% of you all are already involved in your local chapter. Love to see it. Also have a few people who are not yet involved and also a few folks who are not yet members. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to the folks who are watching on Facebook or YouTube. My name is Matt Miller. I'm a member of Boston DSA and also a newly elected member of DSA's National Political Committee. That's our leadership body that we elect every 2 years at convention. And I am so excited to be here with you tonight, sharing some of the amazing work that we're doing in Boston DSA in Somerville, Massachusetts. And for those of you who don't know the area that well, Somerville is a city that borders Boston right on the northwest. It is very much a part of the metropolitan Boston area, but it does elect its own mayor and its own city council. And so it's important to note that although our chapter is called Boston DSA, we have hundreds, thousands of members who live in Somerville and the surrounding cities. And actually a fun fact, in parts of Somerville, if you grab 100 people off the street in Union Square, Somerville, you are statistically likely to get one DSA member. And DSA members live next door to you in Somerville. DSA members work at your favorite local business, and DSA members might be your city councilor in Somerville. So tonight we're going to meet six socialist city council candidates who are running for Somerville's city council this year. We have endorsed 7 DSA members who are running for city council. Tonight, JT Scott was unable to peel himself away from an important local development meeting. He's talking to dozens, hundreds of local residents about a development issue. So really putting the sewer socialism into action there. All 7 of our candidates we're really excited about them. If all of them win, we will have 7 out of the 11 city council seats in Somerville with a DSA member in that chair. So that's really exciting. That would definitely be the first majority socialist city council, I think, in New England history. And we are really working hard to make sure that that happens. So This is about Somerville, but it's also about you. Back in 2016, when I joined DSA, our chapter didn't have an electoral working group. We were lucky enough, I think actually at the first meeting of our electoral working group, we had Ben join us as an attendee. And we were lucky in 2017 to be able to endorse Ben and JT Scott. We're running as two first-time challengers for City Council around issues of development, without displacement, climate change, and other important issues. And our chapter worked really hard to elect them, and they've been doing fantastic work since they've been in office. And we have continued over the past 4 years to build up that mobilizing capacity in our chapter, build up that organizing capacity to be able to even contemplate the possibility of endorsing 7 DSA members who are running for council this year. So our chapter mobilized hard and sorry, I just lost my place for a second. So our chapter worked really hard to elect them, and I am so proud to have a chance to share this story with you all. So this is about our work in Somerville and in the Boston area, but I also want DSA members who are listening into this call to think about what work they'd like to do locally. We will have some asks for you for donations and for phone banking asks. If you're really brave and excited and want to come out, we'd love to have canvassers, but I also want you all to hear about some of the upcoming events that the National Electoral Committee is going to be putting on. We'll have trainings where you can learn what skills you need to do this sort of work in your local chapter. So to start, we're going to meet each of these candidates by starting with a question, giving them a chance to introduce themselves and tell you the story, because I think they're all better speakers than I am, and they're going to be a lot more engaging and exciting, and you're going to learn a lot. So first, I'm going to turn to Eve Sychek, who up until recently was the co-chair of Boston DSA. They were very involved in our electoral working group, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you decided to run for city council and what you think the possibilities are.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I mean, I'm a longtime Democratic Socialist electoral activist, and I think the reason for that, if you're on this call, maybe you agree with this, maybe not, but I think the reason for socialists to do electoral work and not just work in the unions or on the streets, right, is that it creates a unique opportunity to meet people where they're at and speak to people that our other work doesn't always reach. People in the US, for better or for worse, I would argue for worse, see electoral politics as sort of the key site of politics in their lives a lot of the time. And I think bringing our socialist message to those people, as well as starting the kind of polarizing fights that we saw like Kshama Sawant do with the Fight for 15 in Seattle that ignited and spread throughout the country, is a unique opportunity that's sort of available for electoral politics. So I've always thought that this work was worth doing, but I guess I've also always thought, and I would say this in electoral working group meetings, that in order to deliver like huge change for our class, the working class, like DSA has got to move towards developing and running our own people. Something like what Socialist Alternative did with Kshama Sawant, or what New York City DSA did with Julia Salazar, but people who are accountable to a large mass organization like DSA that better represents working people who want big change in our society, as opposed to like a more ideologically narrow group like Socialist Alternative. So I was like, we need to take some of the success that other groups are having by really running people who are genuinely accountable, who came up through their chapters or through their organization's political education, and who want to do movement electoral politics, and run those people instead of evaluating outside progressives in the way that like a lot of NGOs who do endorsements do, right? Which was the way that, for good reasons at the time, we had done it in Boston with mixed results. And I also got the sense that there was an opportunity to export the work that New York City DSA was doing with this really vibrant, powerful, and inspiring electoral program across the US. And we actually talked to the New York City DSA comrades to get a sense of what they were doing to kickstart our own project. But the long and short of it was that I guess I had told other people that we got to run our own people for long enough. And eventually I just ended up getting talked into doing it myself. And I guess the good news is First of all, that JT and Ben Ewenkampen had already gotten a toehold in Somerville on City Council and had already been doing great socialist electoral work in 2017. And also, we were able to talk amazing organizers like Willie and Charlotte and Becca and Tessa into joining us, and which really put our this majority on City Council in reach, which poses new and interesting and different and exciting questions for socialists who are doing electoral work, right? Because all of a sudden, we have the chance to really enact some of our boldest policies, like with Somerville, which is getting tens of millions of dollars in COVID relief funding. We could use some of that money to build social housing and really meet the needs of people in our community for housing, like when the market has really failed them, and to really think about how we can decommodify housing while fighting at the state level for reforms like rent control at the same time, and what those fights could mean for bringing together people in our city who want to challenge the power of the billionaire class and the big developers in Somerville to chart an entirely new course. Like I'm sure Becca will tell you, but she was on the National DSA Green New Deal Committee and the Eco-Socialist Working Group, right? We have the chance to really design and pilot and experiment with a local Green New Deal that can represent big changes like free public transit, like heat pumps, all sorts of geothermal microgrids, all this kind of exciting stuff, because we'll have that influence and we'll be able to convince people in Somerville, voters in Somerville, to give us a shot to implement some of these exciting proposals, which I think ultimately impacting people's lives and showing the power of our socialist politics in practice, that when we raise expectations, when we fight hard, when we bring regular people into the political process and then bring them to City Hall to demand a better world, that we win. Right. And I think people learn and struggle. And I think if we want to build a mass movement for socialism, how do we get from point A to point B? To me, the essential work there is to organize people and show the power of our class organized in motion to meet our just basic needs for dignity and housing and just our basic needs. And I really think that we have an exciting opportunity in Somerville to do that. And so for me, as a Boston DSA and as a DSA electoral organizer, to me, this is a really exciting time. And I've just really been honored to be part of this project, and I'm honored to be with you here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eve. Folks will have a chance to ask questions towards the end. So if you've got any, as you hear candidates talking, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Eve preempted me a little bit. The next question is in fact going to Becca. And it is about you've been involved very closely with the National Eco-Socialism Working Group and a lot of the Green New Deal campaigning. Can you talk about how your campaign is in some ways an extension of that work? And what are you hoping to accomplish in the Somerville Green New Deal?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone, my name is Becca. I'm running for Ward 7 councillor in Somerville, which is the western part of the city. It's next to Tufts University. So there's a lot of students, and it also has significant public and senior housing. The main complex of which is on North Street and is about to go through a redevelopment process that our comrades Ben and JT and some other councillors fought for using union labor in. For the last couple of years, I've been working with low-income families and local farmers to advocate for food security programs. We've won $47 million in state funding since 2017. Through my work, I bring people into the democratic process to advocate for their needs every day, and I'm really excited to take this approach to City Hall. When did I join DSA? I joined DSA in 2018. It feels like a lifetime ago. And I was also on nationwide Eco-Social Steering Committee, as Matt and Eve mentioned, from 2019 to 2021, and was also one of the founders of our local energy democracy campaign, Take Back the Grid. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with the nationwide Eco-Social Working Group, but they launched the Green New Deal campaign that has been working on passing the PRO Act and the Green New Deal for public schools. I think one of my comrades, Shauna, is on here, who's been really deeply involved in that work. And so I see running for city council as a way to build capacity for transformative change, right? Like a Green New Deal for public schools would be amazing in Somerville, because a lot of our schools really need some serious upgrades, and that takes cash, and we really need that. And we really need to invest in making sure that our paraprofessionals are well compensated, right? So I think that part of that campaign would have like real impacts in Somerville. And, you know, some brief things that would go into a Somerville Green New Deal. This is like by no means comprehensive because we're talking about transformative change here, right? But I would like us to, you know, invest in a lot of infrastructure that we have been neglecting a little bit. Like our socialist ancestors, we need to really invest in Somerville's sewer system. We need millions of dollars of investment to make those upgrades and make it climate resilient and protect our communities from, you know, corroding pipes. I think basically the ethos behind a Somerville Green New Deal is investing in climate resilient infrastructure, addressing environmental racism, and centering the working class throughout. So sewer systems, setting a goal to be carbon neutral by 2030, like other cities across the United States have started to do to reduce our emissions, bring up all of our municipal buildings to be net zero, prioritizing safe permeable streets with protected bike lanes and passing a bike safety network ordinance, which would help create complete streets, prevent pedestrian deaths and reduce emissions, build more community gardens to foster food security and local ag and businesses, start a green space fund from development. Somerville is an incredibly attractive place to develop, as I think most of my fellow candidates know. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. So we really need to make sure that we're getting all we can from developers, including like passing a community benefits agreement ordinance and a local hiring ordinance, protecting our neighbors from air pollution. There are public housing residents in the city that live next to an interstate highway that's incredibly busy, especially now that traffic is starting to come back and don't have noise barriers that our neighboring communities have, which is just incredibly racist occurrence in our city. And we also need to work, like Eva's already said, with our neighboring communities in Greater Boston for a fare free MBTA. Michelle Wu, although not a socialist, has been working on this for several years. And they are starting a, it's Route 28, which goes through several like historically Black and Latinx communities in Boston. That's a fare-free bus route this fall. So that's really like an awesome beginning to creating a whole fare-free system. And we need to work with our state delegation to advocate to Mass Save, which is our state's energy efficiency program, to allow heat pumps to be used in homes transition to clean energy instead of, you know, the option which is currently, which is natural gas. And as well as just making sure that we're incenting homes transitioning to clean energy that benefits both homeowners and renters. So thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it. It's so nice to be with folks from across the country. And I'm sure I missed something, so put some suggestions in the chat because we love to hear them. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, Becca. Next, I'm going to go to Ben Ewenkampen. You were first elected to the council back in 2017, and the council's record over the last 4 years has been pretty impressive. Could you talk about your proudest accomplishments over the last 4 years? And you're the only one of the 7 candidates who's running unopposed. So what will your focus be for the next 2 years, especially with more DSA members potentially on the council?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for putting this together. I'm Ben Ewenkampen. I was elected to the city council in Somerville in 2017. And my campaign was actually one of several that year. That it came from a real groundswell of community organizing that was happening in Somerville at that time. And it was really focused around 2 enormous real estate developments in Somerville. And in particular, we were focused on some really egregious giveaways that the city was giving to large politically connected developers. And I actually just noticed 2 of my colleagues on the city council are here tonight. Jesse Klingen, Matt McLaughlin, who have just been completely incredible colleagues, and all this work have been major inspirations for me the entire time that we've been working together. So the community organizing that was happening at that time in 2016, 2017, it helped bring together a really diverse coalition in the city that it included affordable housing advocates, labor advocates, climate activists, immigrants' rights advocates, and Boston DSA, which was much smaller at that time, actually played a really important role in that coalition. And in that election, we all kind of came together, challenging some kind of good old boy incumbents around the idea that the local government in Somerville at that time really had not been reflecting the values of the community. Local politics in Somerville, like I think many cities around the country, was really dominated by a pretty small network of basically good old boys. And in particular, it was the issue of affordable housing. So that's what I'll talk about right now. I think what's been really inspiring about the work that we've already done in Somerville and what I hope to continue doing is that those of us kind of on the left have not just been one or two dissenting voices here voting no on everything. We actually have a very powerful seat at the table, and we have the ability to create and pass new laws. So the challenge, and certainly going forward as well, is about how to translate our values and all of the community organizing that is happening already in the city and turn that into policies and laws that actually make a difference. So I'll be focusing on housing. When you're talking about municipal government, it gets pretty granular pretty quick, and a lot of the really consequential work that we've done is at a very granular level. And so as just one example, one of the things that we did very early on was to take some tough votes on personnel changes, on mayoral appointees to the powerful boards like the planning board and the zoning board. And we were able to successfully vote to remove multiple members of these planning boards who were basically unqualified rubber stamps for politically connected developers. And right off the bat, that made a huge difference. We also took a really intense look at basically every single local law that is within our control as a city council that is preventing us from protecting tenants or that is making it difficult to create new affordable housing. And we worked with local tenants' rights lawyers, with activists, to maximize every single one of those policies to the benefit of tenants, to the benefit of affordable housing. Without going too much into the weeds, this is things like the laws that regulate condo conversions, flipping rental units into condos, Airbnb regulations, creating a new Office of Housing Stability for tenants to reach out to when they're in trouble. We created a new community land trust, and we pumped a lot of money into a city program that buys up existing housing and turns it into permanently affordable housing. And we're also contributing to a lot of statewide organizing around rent control and a number of other policies to benefit tenants. And I will also just mention we've done a great deal of work on surveillance oversight by the police department. We were the second city in the entire country to ban the use of facial recognition. And that was part of what's now become quite a large movement and includes cities like Boston and many others to follow suit. We've also created kind of comprehensive surveillance oversight language for the police department that now requires a public vote of the city council for any new surveillance technology, which is completely different from the way it used to work. And in the past year, we were also able to become the first city in the state to ban tear gas. So that is all stuff that I'm very proud of. Going forward, I think those are all very important reforms when it comes to police. What I am really excited about doing is creating a new non-police, unarmed community response force to respond to all of the nonviolent, non-criminal emergencies that come into 911. And this is going to take a lot of work. This is not stroke of a pen stuff. This is a lot of work in community organizing to build up something like that is robust and effective. And I am really excited to have people who are smart and committed and care about this stuff to put in the work to get it done.
Thank you so much, Ben. That's really quick tour of all the great stuff you've been working on. I'm going to go next to Tessa Bridge, who's running in Ward 5. You've been organizing in Somerville for years. I remember you helping mobilize large numbers of community members for actions around affordable housing, fair wages for paraprofessionals, and more. Can you talk about what made you decide to run for city council and what specifically you think an activist councilor could do that maybe you couldn't do just as an organizer?
Great. Thanks for this question, and thanks everyone for having us here tonight. My name is Tessa. I'm running for city council in Ward 5 and here in Somerville, and I'm really happy to be here. So my personal entry into organizing was Bernie Sanders' campaign, and that was only escalated for me when Trump won in 2016. And when that happened, you know, like many of us, I sort of took a look around and said, you know, what can I and should I be doing more to make sure that we as a society and as a community are living into our values? And the place that I decided to put my energy into was local organizing here in Somerville. I felt really strongly, and I still do, that the best way to impact change is at the local level, in your own community with your neighbors, building power, building solidarity, and building community together. So I was part of the founding steering committee for Our Revolution Somerville, and for many years that was my organizing home in Somerville. And you know, one of the things that was amazing about Bernie's campaigns was that it really showed us the feedback loop of electeds and organizers pushing together for change, and the role that campaigns can play to build power and raise expectations. Sometimes I say to people, I feel like I have this superpower where I knock on doors and people will answer them and then they will talk to me. And that is amazing as an organizer to have that kind of access across the city. And I think that's something that is something that I feel really honored to be a part of and have that access to folks, and think is like a really big and important piece of movement building. So that's something that I'm really excited to be doing. And in 2017, when we were organizing so much in Somerville to elect, Ben and JT, and also other folks who are on this call tonight, to the city council and in Somerville, and push forward, some of the strong progressive agendas that, Ben mentioned just a minute ago, we really had the opportunity to elect movement candidates for the first time in my life that I had been a part of, and in a way that radically transformed our city and really increased engagement in our city, and sort of this sense that when we come together, we can really disrupt the status quo. And then to have folks on the inside who have been pushing some of these policies that, Ben just laid out, so many of them, in partnership with us who've been organizing, in the streets and in our community, and working together on that is part of how we've been able to win the victories that we've won so far. And so I really see these two pieces as going very much hand in hand. And I've also experienced this in my professional work. I worked for many years in Cambridge public schools doing educational justice organizing. And we also were able to build a movement of parents, educators, and families, and young people, to come together and push for educational justice, racial justice in our schools. And we ended up, out of that movement, electing several school committee members. So I saw in that instance too, the power when folks are elected out of a movement, the accountability that is felt, the people who are there, who elected them, and how those two, they can work together sort of from an inside and an outside lens. So this is something that I very much believe in. And I'll just say sort of more specifically, we've talked a lot about housing here, but I'll lift up the paraprofessional contract fight as an example of one of the ways that having folks who are clearer and have access to information and understand the way that our city governments function as part of a campaign can be really powerful. Because when you're on the outside, you often don't have information or don't know how to understand the budget, or don't know exactly sort of where to maybe apply pressure, or when it's time to sort of make compromises or continue to push. And I think when you have those relationships and we begin or continue to make our governments more transparent to organizers and share information and really make it a partnership, we can actually win these sort of transformational, unprecedented victories. So I think the grounding of elected folks in the movement, the accountability piece, and sort of that information sharing is something that can be incredibly powerful to win huge victories. And finally, I'll say, I tell people on the doors all the time that this is a partnership, and that part of what the movement needs to do and residents need to do is hold all of us accountable to the promises that we are making here. And I take really seriously the fact that, when we started this campaign, there were sort of two goals. One is to win, and the other is to really raise expectations, have these conversations, and bring people into local organizing and local politics. And so the accountability and the transparency piece around that is something that we have already succeeded in doing. People are super energized in our city. It's amazing that there are so many of us sort of talking about a future that felt frankly impossible a few years ago and now feels very reachable. And I'm just so excited to see, hopefully we all get elected and we can, continue to fight that way. But regardless, to see our residents, our movements here in Somerville so activated and energized and engaged, like it feels impossible that transformative change won't come in one way or another. So I feel really excited and proud to be a part of that.
Thank you so much, Tessa. I am really excited to be a part of it too. I think a lot of our members of our chapter are, and all around the country. I'm going to go next to Willie, who's running at large. You were one of the founders of Defund SPD, referring to Somerville Police Department. And that's a movement that's been organizing hard for a more just city budget for a while now. Can you talk to us a little bit about the stakes of this election on that front? And what would you like to see a socialist city council majority do differently?
Thank you for that question, Matt, and thanks to everyone for being here. First, I want to just briefly introduce myself. My name is Willie Burnley, candidate for Somerville City Council at large. I'm a queer community organizer, a renter, a former union steward, and yes, one of the founders of Defund SPD, along with Charlotte, which is a grassroots abolitionist organization started in Somerville in the wake of the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And in the midst of COVID cuts to our city's budget, along with the kind of incredible devastation that those deaths brought to me personally, into the country, something that doubled down the kind of outrage for me personally was seeing that in Somerville, like in many other cities, when COVID was really hitting the fan, there were massive cuts threatening our social safety net. And specifically here, our city was potentially going to cut money to the housing budget, to the health and human services budget, to the economic development budget, and was barely going to touch the police budget. And at a time where people's lives were being completely upended by a health crisis that was also a economic crisis, it made no sense to me personally why we would be not putting more money into economic development, defunding our healthcare, and defunding our housing budgets when people were being displaced at record numbers. So that was kind of the conditions that set the groundwork for many of us in Somerville to come together to actually push forward and create a situation where we could say a better world is possible. We can actually create alternatives to state-sanctioned violence that protect people and also make sure that our critical services are funded. And that's what we did. We organized locally. And we were able to get thousands of residents to sign on to literally defunding the police. We asked them how much they wanted to do it by. The average percent was 60%. And we pushed the city to do at least 10%, knowing that 60% was probably outside of our political possibilities at that time. In doing so, in the first year of Defund SPD, we actually moved over $1 million out of the police department in total and put it back into housing, healthcare, and all these really, really critical programs that help to actually keep our community safe. And so when you talk about what the stakes of this election are, the stakes are us actually being able to do as Ben said and create the structures that will actually keep our community safe without having to rely on armed forces for every single problem. And unfortunately, the opposition to this movement has hardened in Somerville in some ways. This year, there were not significant cuts to the police department, even though their Defund SPD is growing rapidly and has literally like hundreds of active members in our community. So to also wrap into another question that you asked my fellow candidates, I decided to run partially because people said to me, who I trusted, if you actually want to get this done, you, instead of just advocating for it, you can help take this fight to the council and vote on it yourself. And I want to be someone who's going to be an organizer in office and work with our movements to make sure that the transformative work we need to do around defunding police, building up alternatives, creating social housing and making housing a human right, in passing a Somerville Green New Deal that is going to help us deal with the scale of the climate crisis locally and in our state and abroad. I know that we can do that if we have the political willpower to do so. And so I'm really glad to be here with all of you, because I know that I can't do it alone. We need movements. And that's what makes DSA such an incredible place. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. Really love that answer. Next, we're going to go to Charlotte Kelly, who's also running at large. I don't know if folks on the call saw, but the Somerville Slate was recently featured in the press, described as sidewalk socialists, harkening back to the sewer socialists that Becca mentioned. So Charlotte, what does that mean, sidewalk socialists? And can you talk about how a socialist city council would handle operations in the city?
Yeah. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. There are lots of folks in the chat who are volunteering on our campaign. Thank you to the folks from National DSA for making this possible. I'm listening to my partner make phone banking calls behind me. So like, we are doing the work to fuel these campaigns. And I'm just so grateful to be in this space with so many comrades tonight. I'm Charlotte. I use she, her pronouns. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then tie it into this sidewalk socialism question. So I'm a queer person. I'm a 4th generation resident here in Somerville. I'm currently a labor organizer, and most of my work has been in the education justice movement. Ever since I was a student at a public university here in Massachusetts, and I had to take on student loan debt in order to attend a public university. My classmates came to me and said, Charlotte, public education wasn't always this expensive. We can organize around this. And so I got the bug, and I haven't stopped organizing since. I think this question is really fantastic because it asks us about the nitty gritty. It asks us about how we actually make people's material conditions here in Somerville better. As socialists, we think about the material conditions of our world every single day. We think about how capitalism and profiteering ultimately squeezes the working class and makes our planet unlivable and makes our working conditions harder and harder every single day. And so as sidewalk socialists, I think we are taking a fundamentally different approach to when it comes to delivering people the public goods and public services that they deserve. I think our comrades up in Buffalo, New York, India Walton's campaign has done a fantastic job of talking about how if we live in a world where human rights like housing, food, transit, good quality union jobs are denied from folks, then we are not living in a world that centers our humanity and our justice. And to Willie's point, as a public education organizer, I think about austerity constantly. I think about how we give austerity measures in our schools when we pay paraprofessionals unlivable poverty wages. I think about austerity when we fail to invest in traffic calming measures and improving our roads and our sidewalks. I think about austerity measures when we fail to maintain and give high quality living to our neighbors in public housing developments. And yet we don't have the same austerity mindset when it comes to police budgets. We don't have the same austerity mindset when it comes to privatizing public services and paying expensive consultants to do public sector work. We don't have the austerity mindset when it comes to giving developers handouts and gifts. And we definitely don't have the austerity mindset when we allow nonprofit institutions to basically accumulate profits in our community or grow their endowments. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to watch our wages decrease, watch our housing conditions decrease, and ultimately struggle to move around the city of Somerville. And so at the end of the day, sidewalk socialists are fundamentally trying to take an institutional, structural, and systemic approach to the everyday issues of potholes, of rats, of rent increases, of food insecurity. We recognize that these are not individual experiences that we are going through, but these are policy failures that have been put down on us. And as an organizer, I think Tessa said this really brilliantly, but us running is not about getting our faces out there, accumulating more power, and ultimately being elected officials. I decided to run because I knew what it was like to be an organizer, to stand outside the halls of power and ultimately be told no by people who control the systems that ultimately push us down in the first place. And so for us, as organizers who have stepped into this position, this really uncomfortable and alienating position of running for office, we recognize the movements that we need to have outside the doors of power that will make it impossible for us to deny people high quality living, high quality food, high quality transit, high quality streets at the end of the day. And if we start to fail on those promises that we keep, That's either an opportunity for us to be gut checked by the movements that got us elected and say, hey, how do we do better? Or to really dig in and figure out what the policy solutions are going to be. As Ben mentioned, defunding the police and reimagining what public safety truly means is going to take a massive overhauling of the carceral logic that we have defaulted to here in our communities. So Sidewalk Socialism is about building trauma-informed services, building the kind of community care that centers healing and justice. Sidewalk Socialism to me means investing in public health services like a free public health clinic here in our community, or addressing the rat crisis that we're experiencing right now every single day in Somerville. So I'm really damn fired up about this election. We have a truly transformative opportunity on our hands to put more resources into the hands of working class and poor people. And at the end of the day, if we shift the material conditions of our neighbors, if we make people's lives more livable, if we bring people into the political process, that is the disruption of capitalist realism. That is how we build a socialist future. And ultimately, that's how we hold each other with love and compassion and dignity, and ultimately give one another everything that we deserve in this world. So I'm so jazzed to be here tonight. I'm so damn excited to continue organizing with all of you. And I cannot wait till November 2nd when we have a socialist majority on the council.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. I don't want to talk after you. That was so inspiring. I mentioned at the top of our call that JT is in a community meeting still. So JT Scott, I actually had the honor of being his campaign manager back in 2017. He took a chance on somebody who hadn't managed a campaign before, and it worked out okay. Got his sign behind me right there. And I think the points that Ben talked about earlier about the massive transformative redevelopment that's been happening in Somerville, that was the real issue in that 2017 campaign. I really do wish that I'd asked JT to take a photo of his shoes when AOC won in 2018. And you saw the worn down shoes. JT was out there constantly knocking doors, talking to voters, getting to the point where voters were saying, "You again? This is like the 12th time you've talked to me, the 13th time. What? I haven't made up my mind. What do you want from me?" But he really built that trust with residents that he'd be there if people needed something, that he would be in the community right there with folks. So that field capacity is really, I think, a major takeaway, a big learning for our chapter and our work in 2017 was just how impactful talking to your neighbors can be, talking to residents about what issues they care about, and connecting maybe a city council election that they're just not thinking about. I mean, before I got active in activism, I wasn't thinking about city councils, but they really, as you've heard from the last amazing speakers, they really shape a large portion of our experience in our communities and can really determine whether or not folks are able to build a long-lasting community that feels like a community, or if there's a lot of displacement or things aren't going quite the same. So that brings me to the next point here, which is that JT wore his shoes out, and we in our chapter, these folks on the call right now have been knocking thousands of doors, tens of thousands of doors, talking to tons and tons of all of our neighbors in Somerville about these issues, and having the long, hard conversations with people about how these policies are really going to help them and help make a city that works for everyone. So a majority socialist city council in Somerville would be the first of its kind in New England, and I think it would really help. There we do actually have JT. I would like to let him unmute and talk for a second.
Wow. Hi, Matt. Hi, everybody. Hi, DSA. Hi, Facebook on the recording and stream. Geez, Matt, welcome. What are we talking about?
Just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. I gave a far too positive, loving recap of your 2017 campaign and how great you were. I don't want you to actually let any of that go to your head, but just talk about why you're running for re-election and what you think folks on the call should take away from this. What's so important about Somerville?
Well, I gotta say, I didn't hear it, so don't you worry. I'll stay humble. I'm late here tonight because I just spent the last over 2.5 hours hosting a neighborhood meeting. And it seems like a really humble thing. But when you talk about democratic socialism, for me, it at its heart is about taking care of people and getting more people involved in the democratic process, right? The more we can democratize our institutions, the more we can make them about people. It's critical that the people of any city, our city especially, but any city, feel like the city is there working for them. And when too many decisions are made by consultant class or bureaucratic class without really having the people involved in that decision-making process, there's no way that any consultant can know better than the people who live in the neighborhood what that neighborhood needs. And it leads to people feeling more and more disengaged and checked out, which is why all the policy, whether it's from the big picture stabilization policies like rent control, which, even if you're not thinking about it in terms of an affordability solution, ultimately it's an engagement solution. It's a way to get more people involved in their neighborhood and in their process because they know they have the same stability and likelihood they're going to be able to keep their apartment from year to year. Having these neighborhood meetings is a critical part of walking the walk. And I got to tell you, for the last 2.5 hours, it was all about sidewalks. It was all about the traffic in the neighborhood. It was all about how these developments that the city is considering, the city's working with, can make sure that those developments truly benefit the neighborhood and the neighbors in it, instead of just enriching the developers. So that's been the work of the last 4 years, and that work continues. And that's why I'm really excited about all of these people who I'm sure have been talking far more eloquently than I can about a lot of the core concepts we all have in common, that we all share a lot of these fundamental theories of change, theories of power, and theories of how we can improve conditions for our neighbors to make a better world. I'm just humbled by the prospect that I'm going to get to work with these incredible people on the city council next year, doing that nitty gritty work of making a better city for everyone, for all here in Somerville. So, boy, it's just really exciting. And I really appreciate all the folks around the country who are starting to pay attention here as we make this last push in the last 4 weeks. Because my goal here isn't necessarily to root for laundry, right? My goal here is not to root for anybody wearing a red shirt or with the right affiliations, the right friends. My goal here is to get more and more of our neighbors involved. And so, for the election, the finest thing I can see is having record high turnout in my ward, Ward 2, but also citywide, because I think when we do that, it's because we're giving people hope of a city and a future that takes their input seriously and can build a world that has space for them in it. So I just really appreciate everybody in a team effort helping to make sure that it happens here and abroad.
Thanks, JT. I'm really glad you were able to make it. I do wish we had the reacts as well. JT, Eve, Willie, Ben, Charlotte, Becca, Tessa, these are folks that I really want to see on the city council next year. And our chapter in Boston, the Somerville DSA members are all out there knocking a lot of doors, talking to voters. And one exciting thing that we are going to be doing is we've got a little piece of literature that we're printing up that both talks about the candidates as well as the work that DSA is doing. That's going to cost some money. And so I think Austin is going to be able to drop in the chat this link to Act Blue, where if you'd like, we're going to need to raise a couple $100s over the next 2 weeks to get this printed. If you're able to contribute anything here, that would be a huge help. Our chapter is really excited about this. I've seen the initial proofs. I don't want to share it because we're going to change some stuff, but it's really, really awesome. You're gonna be blown away when you see this lit. We'll have photos of it later. I also want to shout out that these candidates are all in the final stretch of doing mail campaigns, reaching voters, automated dialers like the one that I'm going to ask you to join next cost money. And so if you're able to contribute anything towards the contribute anything to the candidates, there's another link that Austin's going to drop in called the Make Somerville History link. I see a question. The donation to the Boston DSA PAC does not count towards, it's a separate donation. You can give up to $500. Does not count towards any of the candidate contributions that you may have made. And thank you, Eric, giving a little bit more than you normally would. Eric is a great comrade. Thank you so much. And there's Austin's form. So that's the form that'll be split out among all the candidates who are running for office this year. And just give folks a second to do that. If you can put in the chat if you're donating, that would be huge. I don't have the big MSNBC board up next to me that I can see all the donations coming in. That was an oversight on my part. I wish I had it. I've always wanted to be the big board guy that I just get asked to walk over to a board and point at stuff. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Boston DSA Zoom. Thank you, Shauna. Aliana, thank you so much. Okay, so folks might still be making donations. That's okay. The next 4 weeks, the next, 4 or 5 weeks, it's 27 days, not that I'm counting. We are going to be doing phone banks every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. So you can hop on the dialer. We'll be calling voters in Somerville, telling them about our candidates. You know, there are a lot of COVID safety precautions that we had to follow to make sure that we aren't going inside large buildings. There's a lot of people who are not totally accessible to door knocking. So use that link that Austin just put in, bdsa.us/sidewalks, and that will let you phone bank. There are shifts tomorrow at 6 p.m. It's been really fun. We did this session last week. The candidates were on. You get to chit chat with them. If you want to ask a question about anything, you'll have their undivided attention. They'll have to be nice to you because you're calling for them. Thank you, Aram. I'm seeing stuff coming in the chat. Wow, thank you so much. And just a reminder that, you know, if you want to, if you live nearby and want to come canvassing, you can also reach out to our chapter. I'll put our email address here. Actually, I'll put the regular volunteer link if you're interested. But feel free to reach out. You'll be able to find our contact info on the website if you want to organize a trip out or something. But really, phone banking will help us direct our volunteers in this in the Boston area, in Somerville, to hit the doors mostly. I hope folks are excited. I hope folks are excited about a potential socialist majority on the Somerville City Council next year. I want to put a couple shout outs though, because you might also be thinking, hey, I want to elect some socialists in my chapter, in my neck of the woods. I want to form an electoral working group. So there are a few really exciting events coming up that the National Electoral Committee has put on. So first is going to be tomorrow, a program called Building a Field Program. So this is really talking about just what I was talking about with knocking on doors, phone banking, reaching voters. This is a great way for you to meet electoral organizers all across the country. Eve is right, Field wins socialist elections. We don't often have the large donations. Our candidates tend to have all these restrictions. They don't want to take money from police unions. They don't want to take money from real estate developers. They don't want to take money from fossil fuel lobbyists. So Field is really how we make sure that we win. There's also messaging training the following week. And finally, there's also 2 weeks from today on October 20th, there's going to be another really exciting call with Richie Floyd, Evan Holt, and Joel Brooks. Those are some socialist city council candidates running in Florida, Ohio, and New Jersey. Almost said North New Jersey, like it's a state. And that's painting the town red, building socialist power through municipal power. So I hope you will consider signing up for those. These NEC trainings are going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So you can make these a double header. You could phone bank for the Somerville candidates and then stay on Zoom and learn from organizers all across the country. So Thank you so much to the folks who I see in the chat donating, the folks who are comrades who are signing up for shifts. It is so, so important. I really appreciate it. I know these candidates really, really appreciate it. Eric is signing up for a phone bank. Can anyone put in the chat if you're going to be able to join us tomorrow night at 6 Eastern for that phone bank? Willie is. That's great. It's really fun. It's going to be 6 p.m. Eastern time. Spencer is going to be there. Eve is going to be there. Seth will be there. I see Kate. JT is going to phone bank. We've got the full crew here. Roy, thank you so much, Roy. Las Vegas phone banking. Awesome. Okay. Well, I am going to open it up now for if folks have any questions. As Austin said, you can put any of these questions that you've got in the Q&A box. That'll help us keep it sorted. The chat is probably going to go continue to have people dropping in that they're signing up for a shift. So don't use that, use the Q&A box. And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, I don't know if any of our candidates have anything that they realized, oh gosh, I really wish I had said that in my 5 minutes. Becca, go ahead.
This is a bad joke, but I forgot to mention some reason why I decided to run is that comrades made the hard ask of me. One of them is on the Zoom. It's Matt. I joke about Matt about how bullying works, but that's probably too real for this call. But yeah, comrades make the hard ask of one another. It's good. And yeah, it helps build socialism.
I don't think I ever bullied you. No, you don't want me running for office. Maybe Shauna missed the intro. I'm not the best public speaker. I don't see, yeah, let's go ahead to Charlotte.
While we're stalling for questions to come in, which we are deeply waiting for, I just want to talk a little bit about our field program. So Eve put in the chat, field wins socialist campaigns. I just want to add a little bit of texture to that. So we in Somerville for the at-large race, Eve, Willie, and myself decided to work in deep coordination and consensus with each other when we decided to run, because we recognized that we didn't want a politics of saviors. We wanted a politics of people who were going to hold each other accountable and also be accountable to the movements that will help get us elected. But in running a fundamentally different campaign, we made deep commitments to ourselves to be bringing people into the political process, which required us to invest really heavily in contacting voters who do not traditionally get brought into municipal elections. We know that systemic racism, economic inequality, all of these factors that the traditional establishment uses to keep people out of the political process by only contacting super voters who are overwhelmingly older white homeowners was not going to work for us, especially with the politics that we believe in and the principles and values that we have. So I am proud to say that a huge chunk of the voters that we have contacted and a huge percentage of the ones and twos, those are the people who lean our way, who want to vote for us come November 2nd, are folks who have never voted in municipal elections before. That is hugely exciting. And if we are able to actually bring those folks and get them to vote on November 2nd, it's Boston DSA, national DSA, all of the local on the ground organizing groups' job to then keep folks in the political process after November 2nd, right? As an organizer, I'm constantly thinking about November 3rd. And so yes, hop on a dialer, phone bank people. It is super critical. It means we get to contact these folks. It means we get to bring them into the political process, but it also means we have even more people that we can plug into our long-term work, our issue-based organizing come November 3rd. So just wanted to add that.
Awesome. Charlotte, I think you, again, I don't want to have to speak after you. You're just so compelling. We really need Charlotte. We really need Willie. We really need Eve at large in the city council. We need Becca in Ward 7. We need Ben again in Ward 3. We need JT in Ward 2. We need Tessa in Ward 5. It's kind of a weird order. Just so excited. I can't even count straight. Feel free to reach out with any other questions to the Boston Electoral Working Group. I'm putting that in the chat as well. But as we don't have any other questions, I am going to, I'm going to let us all go. Please reach out if you have any questions. We would love to see you on these phone banks. And again, you can bring these questions to the phone bank if you want. You have to call first. I don't want any of the candidates to answer the questions before. Where is one? There is one question. Let's do that. So Matthew asks, what is something you learned from running for office that you wish you knew beforehand? I think we might want to direct this to Ben and JT. Well, let's start with Ben. And then I'm curious, one of the candidates first time this year.
I'll keep this simple. One of the things that I did not know before running for office is that the only thing that matters is knocking on doors and calling people on the phone. At the local level, that is the only thing that matters to get elected, and everything else follows from that. Seems simple once you've been involved, but before I ran for office, I didn't know how campaigns worked, and that is how they work at the local level.
Anybody else have a thought there?
I could talk a little bit about this. Oh, I'm sorry, Tessa, go ahead.
Eve, you go.
All right. I just wanted to say, I think that this has been hugely eye-opening for me. I think, I used to talk a big game about DSA running our own people, and I still believe in that to my core. But I think, it really, doing this really makes you reflect on your own strengths and weaknesses as an organizer. Things like delegating, like just your drive to just push through burnout in the last couple of weeks of an election as we're getting through now, public speaking, like your relationships with people in DSA who you can pull in to form like a core team. This has generated a lot of thoughts for me about running internal DSA campaigns, which I promise to write on Medium and make people on Twitter read. But I have to say that there are I'm glad we've done this, and I feel like I'm hoping that one thing that can come out of this is learnings for other DSA campaigns.
Tessa?
I was just going to say it's a little like a lovey-dovey place to land this tonight, but community, the importance of community is something that I have always known, and it's just so crucial. I cannot imagine doing this without the other folks who are doing this too, at the same time. And most of these folks I didn't know before I started on this journey, or didn't know well. It is really exciting what we're doing, and it is really hard what we are doing. And I'm just very grateful to the other folks who are running, to the folks who are volunteering, to you all who show up and bolster us. And I've given a lot of thought over this time to how lonely it must feel to do this when you're not in a community of people who are doing this together. So I think I've learned a lot about how crucial that is. And I imagine it gets even more crucial when you're on the council. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Love lovey-dovey answers. That's great. Our chapter, it's been great. I mean, the pandemic has been rough, and it's been great to finally be able to get out, door knock, do things outdoors where we can be distanced and socialize, see each other again. I love being on Zoom with you all, but I wish we could all be somewhere in a field, somewhere in person. We need a socialist majority to keep fighting a good fight and make sure that we're investing in a city and a state and a country that is going to make everyone come together after this pandemic. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to everyone who donated. Thanks to everyone who's signing up for a phone banking shift. Thanks to the candidates here who've been, I was able to peel away 1 hour of canvassing to come on this call. Thank you all so much. Have a good night, comrades.